All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Power of Our Story, supported by Sarah Carell, and I will be your host tonight, David Berez. And we're looking forward to hearing the story of Daniel Torrez, who's with us tonight. So everybody, welcome. And Daniel, thank you for being with us tonight. Tonight's title of our conversation is going to be Surthriving Loss, Grief, and Cumulative Trauma Before, Behind, and After the Badge. Daniel's childhood trauma and early training desensitized him before earning his first badge. He will talk about how much emotion, suppression, and desensitization affected his response to critical incidents, how he missed and ignored red flags, warning signs, and reacted negatively to the traumas he faced. Daniel will also describe healthy coping strategies that helped him, as well as his AARR method of responding to trauma and critical incidents. So AARR, the accept what happened, acknowledge it, that it had an effect on him, and respond appropriately, and then reach out for help or information when necessary. So it's accept, acknowledge, respond, and reach out, AARR. So a little bit about Daniel before he gets started. And Daniel currently serves as a volunteer coordinator for the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation and Reentry. He retired from the Army after serving 21 years as a military police officer and has participated in humanitarian aid and disaster relief, law and order, United Nations Peacekeeping, and combat operations worldwide. He has served as a patrol officer and a supervisor, a team squad leader, a non-commissioned officer in charge, a member of the Special Response Team, or SWAT, and he's a master trainer, firearms and non-lethal weapons instructor, Assault School Instructor, and was a member of this one gets me, the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. And for those that don't know what that is the Old Guard, one of the most special units in the Army. Daniel's is an executive protection specialist, and his non-military positions included federal law enforcement, corporate K-12 security, executive protection specialist, university director of public safety, and he's a member of the Arizona statewide peer support association, the Military Police Regimental Association, the International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association, the International Public Safety Association, and the former vice chair of the National Association of Victim Assistance in Corrections Board of Directors. He is a crisis intervention team member, school resource officer, and protective services detail certified, and he has previously supported the U.S. Marshal Service Special Operations Group. Daniel has earned his master's degree from Webster University and his bachelor's degree from Arizona State University. He is currently enrolled in the Certified Public Managers Program through Arizona State University. And my understanding is there's a ton more to his resume, but it didn't fit on the paper for my screen. So we had to cut it off there. But Daniel, you are truly an amazing gift to law enforcement, to the military, to our country, your patriotism. You've been an amazing gift to this group, and thank you for joining us. And we look forward to hearing your story and sharing with us your experiences. So take it away, my friend.
Absolutely. And all that hoo-ha in there just tells you how old I am. I'm a little crusty. So that's all that means. I've been around for a few. I've been some places and done some things. So why do I call my story Surthriving? Because I think that's what we do in our professions and throughout our lives. And it's Surthrive. It's Sir with a small s, because I think we survive what we see, what we go through, and what we experience on the job and in life. And then it's a capital T for the thrive, because even though we go through critical incidents and trauma throughout our life and career, we survive those things and we thrive, continue to thrive, because that's what we do in the service to others. And I think that's what I like to tell people, is that I've been in the service to others my entire adult life, either in the military, law enforcement, training, capacities, things like that. So that's why I use the term Surthrive, because I think that's what we do. I know that's what I did. And I just put a word to it because I'm a wordsmith, or at least I like to think I am. So a little thoughtful announcement. I'm gonna be discussing some critical incidents and traumatic things that happened to me in my life. that I experienced. So I just want to make sure that, there may be some triggering information. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we always want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And if you need to go off camera, or you need for me to stop, just raise your hand, let me know. I probably won't be paying attention to the chat, because if I do, I got to go like this because of my bifocals. So if you see me do that, that's why I'm doing it. It's not a weird twitch or anything like that. So quick background, born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up on the west side. I just like to tell people I'm an old Chicano from the west side of Phoenix. Middle-class family, raised Roman Catholic. I had a stay-at-home mom until I was in junior high, what normal people call middle school nowadays. So she was there making breakfast for us, going to school, and it was great. It was a nice middle-class family. I would consider myself a troubled Ute, and give me a raised hand if you get that reference as the troubled Ute. As such, it took me 5 years plus summer school to graduate high school. And it's not because I really liked the school, it's because I was a knucklehead. But I enjoyed watching Ponch and John, One Adam 12, and for you, I believe you called them hose draggers. I did watch Emergency 51 as a kid as well. So growing up, I knew I wanted to be a firefighter or a police officer. But when I was a junior in high school, my first junior year, I had a little law enforcement contact, and it was a positive encounter for me. So that solidified the fact that I wanted to be a Phoenix police officer. So I knew you had to be 21 to join the academy, or at least apply. So I figured, well, my dad was in the Army, my older brother was in the Army. I'm going to join the Army, be an MP, get some experience, come back, be a Phoenix police officer. And I was ready to do that. I enlisted, and was set to go to training a couple months after graduation. And then, life kind of took a turn for the worse. When I was 16, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and he passed away a couple of years later when I was 18, but he passed away about 3 weeks before I was supposed to go into the Army. I already had his blessing to continue because I could have got out of my enlistment on a compassionate conditions, but he told me no. Torrez never quits. So I had his blessing. He passes away 3 weeks before I was supposed to head to Fort McClellan, Alabama. Did not process, did not cry, did not grieve at all. And next thing you know, I'm at Fort McClellan, Alabama for basic training and MP school. The thing I remember, because I was home, my two older brothers were at work. I was home with my mom and my younger sister. I remember going to my dad's room, and he had passed away overnight. And it was just that smell of death that you never forget. And then I remember I had to make sure that my little sister didn't go in the room. And then I had to call my two older brothers and let them know. So then I'm at basic training, and I'm all in. I'm all go Army. It was 1985. It was be all you can be in the Army, if you remember those crazy commercials. And right away, I was trained to suck it up and drive on. Pain is only weakness leaving the body. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I remember we were doing specific domestic violence response training, and they were showing some pretty graphic photos of domestic violence scenes. And a couple of my fellow soldiers ran out of the room. One of them actually ran out the door and puked, and another one was just, couldn't take it. And I specifically remember the drill sergeant saying, those two troops aren't going to make it. To be a good MP, you can't show emotion. You got to have thick skin. And I was like, great. I'm already pretty good at compartmentalizing my emotions. I say compartmentalizing. My lovely wife, who's a licensed professional counselor, calls that suppression. But I choose the word compartmentalizing. And I came really good at compartmentalizing my emotions. So I graduate, earn my MP badge, and I'm off to Fort Hood, Texas. And like I said, I'm all in. I'm a 19-year-old with a badge and a gun, old Chicano from the west side, and I'm going to save the world. And some things happened while I was at Fort Hood. We had an LODD, line of duty death, with a fellow MP. I didn't know the MP personally, but I'd seen her, at the chow hall. I'd seen her during shift change at the MP station. We had a battalion memorial service. And then it was, okay, everybody go back to work. There was no debrief. There was no, is everybody okay with this? Does anybody need to talk? It was just like, okay, suck it up and drive on, troop. You got work to do. And so that was just the trajectory that I started to go on. Is I learned really early, because of my dad's death and me not processing it or grieving, that I became really good at compartmentalizing my emotions. And that's what I was trained to do. And I wanted to be a good MP. So I figured that's how I was trained. So I would continue to do that. I had a DUI pull over. I was getting ready to handcuff this individual. He turns around and spits in my face. I had never been spit on before like that. So I reacted negatively, which at the time I thought was appropriately. And I smashed his face into the trunk of my sedan, and then I handcuffed him. But I learned later that probably was not the proper response. Just other scenes. One of the ones that really sticks with me, because it brought me back to my dad being in the room and that smell. It was a full cardiac arrest call, and I got there before the firefighters did. And it was a young mother, screaming, help me, help me, help my baby, help my baby. And I see this, what I thought was a 7 or 8 year old child on the couch. And I could tell, because I had that smell, but also so anyway, I took her off the couch, put her on the carpet, and I started to perform CPR on her, even though I knew that she was already deceased. But as soon as I started performing CPR, the mother stopped crying and started saying, thank you, So to me, that was worth it. The firefighters show up and they're looking at me, and they can tell, and they're looking at me like, what the heck are you doing, young private? They didn't say that, but I kind of just gave them a look towards the mom, who was crying, saying, thank you, for helping my baby. So the firefighters jumped in and continued CPR, performed all life-saving measures, put her on a gurney and transported her. And the mother, after I got all her information, she went away. So I go back to the MP station, and I fill out my report, and desk sergeant says, hey, good job, get back out there on the road. It wasn't, again, no debrief, no, does that have any effect on you? Nothing like that. So, again, I just put that in my compartment, and I continue to go and do my job. So about 3 months, in, I said, I was angry all the time. I was fighting with people. I was drinking, I was smoking, and I was doing high risk behaviors that I shouldn't be doing, because I just didn't know what I needed to do. So again, raised Roman Catholic. So I said, well, I'm going to go seek some help. So who do I go see? I tell my team leader, I said, hey, I need to go talk to the chaplain. He said, cool. So I go talk to the chaplain, sitting behind the desk, kind of pour out my heart to him, let him know what's going on. And I said, I need some help. I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I said, I told him about my dad's death and some of the stuff I experienced. So he reaches back and kind of nonchalantly hands me a little pamphlet, talks about grieving. And he says, read that, young trooper. And if you got any more questions or you need some more help, come back and see me. I said, okay, cool. So the one person that I thought I could trust because of my faith basically, kicked me to the curb. So I said, cool. I didn't even read the pamphlet. I think I threw it away. I probably went and had a beer, and just continued being angry, fighting, drinking, smoking, and doing high risk behaviors, because I was reacting negatively to what I was going through instead of responding appropriately. So I do that for a couple more months go by, and I'm like, this isn't working. So I said, well, let me give it one more chance. Chaplain, maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe the chaplain was having a bad day. So I go back. He doesn't remember who I am. I pour out my heart again, tell him what's going on. At least this time he reached back and he actually gave me a book, an actual book on how to grieve the loss of a loved one. And he says, read this book. If you got any questions, come back. I said, cool. So that solidified my trajectory right there throughout my career, probably for a good 2 decades. And I didn't even read the book. I think I threw it in the trash right in the hallway when I left his office, at the battalion headquarters. And yeah, so that was that. So 18 months from my dad's death to the end of my tour at Fort Hood, all these things took place. And then, like I said, that set my trajectory. I was good at not showing emotion. I was good at compartmentalizing whatever it was I experienced. So then I do 15 years active duty as an MP, and throughout those, just real briefly, some of the things that stick with you. I helped process the scene in Germany where a human versus train. So that didn't end well for the human. The train won, and again, there's that smell of the body of a body. Deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm after going to Just Cause in Panama, and we were escorting a combat support hospital up near, near the fighting, and just seeing the casualties come in, our American casualties, soldiers that were blown up, burnt, and again, a very distinct smell, the burnt flesh, again, that kind of just sticks with you. I deployed to Kenya, where we're doing airfield security for Operation Provide Relief. And I was selected based on training and experience to escort the relief flights into Somalia, where it was myself, 2 Air Force combat controllers who were responsible for the satellite equipment, and then a Special Forces medic or a Navy corpsman. And basically we would be dropped off in civilian clothes with 1 bag. We each had a 9mm or our sidearm and 45 rounds. Air Force combat controllers were responsible for making sure the satellite equipment was good to go. Special Forces medic or the Navy corpsman was to make sure if any of us got hurt to patch us up. And I was there for extra security if things went south. So they would drop off the pallets of relief food and leave, and we would just stay there all day, and hopefully none of the locals would come and harass us. And we had some hairy situations. But it was when I was in Somalia Kenya doing the airfield security, it wasn't a bad deployment until we got on the flight and went into Somalia, because I was staying at a 4-star hotel on in Mombasa, Kenya, which is a big tourist town. And again, reacting negatively, I was doing water aerobics with the hotel staff with a water bottle, but my water bottle was filled with either gin or vodka because they're both clear. And that's how I was responding. Well, that's how I was reacting negatively. But one time we were leaving the airfield on the bus to our hotel, and we come across a traffic accident. There's an injured individual in the middle of the road, and the locals are waving us down, and I tell the driver to stop because I was a senior person on the bus. So we start directing traffic. We start performing first aid on this individual in the road. I put some gloves on, and then the locals were saying, hey, the car that hit him is in the water, down this 15-foot embankment. So we're looking, and it was pretty murky water. It was Mombasa, Kenya, and couldn't see the vehicle. So they start yelling, somebody's got to go in and check the driver. So I started looking around. Well, so I jump in, and I dive in, and it's about 15 feet down. So I'm feeling around. I feel the driver. I couldn't get him out the driver's side, so I had to come back up. I go back down. I pull him over to the front seat and pull him out the right rear passenger seat, and get him to the bank. And then, my troops helped me get him up to the bank. And I already knew the guy was gone. He was been in the water too long. But we had all the locals there. We're the good Americans there to help them. So I started performing CPR on this individual, even though I knew he was already deceased. And that took me back to the young girl at Fort Hood, which took me back to my dad when I found him deceased in his bedroom. So I go through these things, and again, I'm just compartmentalizing. We finished there, go back to the hotel. I said, man, that was pretty nasty water. And some people say, the AIDS epidemic started in Mombasa, Kenya. So I said, I should probably take a shower, wash myself up. And I lay down and go to sleep because we're working 12-hour shifts, so we had to do some PT and stuff. So I lay down, and a little while later, our driver went back and told my supervisor, our superiors. So they come knocking on my door after they knew what happened, and they're like, yeah, we got to get you to the hospital. They flushed every orifice I had. They gave me all kinds of tests. I had to go do all kinds of different, leave all kinds of different samples. And it kind of sticks with you when the doctor says, yeah, you should probably get a blood test every 6 months for the next 10 years. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound good. So I just go through my military career. And then on the civilian side, some things happen as well. Normal stuff, birth of children, marriage, and normal. I would assume or suppose with our professions, divorce. So I get divorced from my high school sweetheart, who I now refer to as the birthing vehicle. And I thought I was doing the right thing when I got divorced, and I let our daughter I let her become the custodial parent for our daughter. The birthing vehicle got stupid, got a boyfriend. Boyfriend sexually molested my daughter, and the birthing vehicle was aware of it and did nothing to stop it. So the birthing vehicle gets arrested, the perpetrator gets arrested. I get custody, sole custody of my daughter. I end up remarrying my current wife, my lovely wife, who's in the other room, and we're still together. And my daughter has never seen or spoken to the birthing vehicle since I picked her up from that shelter. But there were some things that went wrong, so I ended up doing some civil suits. I sued the police department that responded to the first calls and did not do anything. They did not investigate further. I sued the attending doctor at the first hospital visit, and I sued the entire hospital system that doctor worked for. And you know, talk about a gut punch. During one of the depositions, the attorney for the doctor, you know, dug into my background, knew I was a military police officer. So basically was asking me, well, this couldn't have happened. You know, how you didn't notice? Aren't you trained on child abuse and child neglect and child molestation? You know, and it took everything for me not to reach across the table and choke slam this individual. So I had to respond appropriately and let them know that, yes, I was in law enforcement, but I was never trained in any specialties with child abuse, child neglect, and things like that. But going through that, you know, as a dad, I did question, you know, why didn't I notice? What signs did I miss? And, you know, that kind of still sticks with me a little bit today. But my daughter grew up, she's doing great things. She's a graphic designer, she's set for life, married. And, you know, the only bad choice she made is when she decided to move to Florida. You know, why would you want to live in Florida when you can have this great Arizona weather? You know, so life happens. The birthing vehicle was unfaithful to me. In my second marriage with my lovely wife, now I was unfaithful to her. Again, reacting negatively to life, and there's no excuse for that. And luckily, after I begged her, she took me back, and we are here today. We'll be celebrating 22 years together. 23. See, she heard me. 20. I'm not very good at math. That's why it took me 5 years plus summer school to graduate. So, you know, life happens and things come full circle. So I retired out of the military out of Fort Irwin, National Training Center in the Mojave Desert in near Barstow, California. And, you know, when our youngest was getting ready to graduate high school, we decided it's time to come back home to Phoenix, Arizona. My lovely wife's originally from Connecticut, but she's gotten used to this weather, I think. You know, those 118 days in the summer versus Connecticut weather. But I got a good job with the Department of Corrections, where I was the victim offender dialogue coordinator. And basically what I did was I helped build this program where we bring survivors of violent crime, to include homicide, so a surviving family member of a homicide victim, we bring them together face to face with the inmate for that restorative justice. You know, and it's a whole process. You know, it doesn't happen in a week or two. Some of the cases I did took 10 months, you know, up to a year. So I was doing that. I thought I was doing some good stuff. I was helping people. I was helping the survivors, which was my priority. But going through that process, you're also helping the offender work through some situations. So I was working with the majority of my cases were child molestation, where the child is now an adult and they have questions for the family member that molested them. And I also had a rapist / murderer who was, you know, part of the Aryan Nation. And I'm bringing these people together, and I thought I was doing good stuff. And I had a lot of people ask me, man, how could you sit face to face with a child molester, those that know the situation with my daughter? And I had to tell them, you know, it's not about me. And I think that's some of the how we think when we're either servant leaders or we're in the service of others. It's not about me. So my goal was to help that survivor and in turn help that offender in any way that I could. And all the cases I did were a success. There, we laughed, we cried, they hugged it out at the end, and it was great. So my position was grant funded, and the grant cycle was coming up for renewal, and my administrator at the time decided to not ask for the money for my position, but they failed to tell me that. And the only reason I found out is because we got a new administrator, and they were told, and they said, well, does Daniel know? And they said, well, no. So the decision for my position to end was made in April, and I didn't find out till August, and the grant cycle ends September 30th. So I knew in about 2 months I would have no job. So that's when I kind of hit a downward spiral. All this stuff comes out. But through that process, you know, I met some great people. Obviously, Leon, my lovely wife, the licensed professional counselor. I have a mentor and best friend, retired Command Sergeant Major that I met when we were both, you know, young corporals at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And while I was doing the victim offender dialogue, I was going to corrections conferences, and I met Kim Yeater, who's a peak performance coach. She does the neuro-linguistic programming and timeline therapy. And, you know, we had some common things that happened to us or family members in our life. And we had just been talking. And she kind of gave me some clarity on things. And I think that's what we need to do when we're clouded, is seek that clarity. So with Kim's help, my lovely wife's support and help, and my mentor / best friend, you know, I snapped out of it. And basically that's when I decided, I said, you know, I got to use what I know. My last 5 years in the Army, I was a observer controller trainer. So I was training soldiers and units to go overseas to Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and the Horn of Africa. And when they train, at the end of a training exercise, we do an AAR, after action review, or some people will call it after action report. And I had done hundreds of those. So I said, you know what, I got to figure out what I got to do here. So that's how I came up with my AAR method. You know, I had to accept what happened to me. And the first thing I had to AAR was my dad's death. So I had to accept the fact that my dad had passed away and there's nothing I could do about it. I had to acknowledge that he had a great impact on me in those 18 years of my life. And, you know, I had to respond appropriately. And that's sharing my story. And I had to reach out and seek help. And again, part of that is being vulnerable when it comes to these types of situations. So you know, I was headed that downward spiral when I knew I wasn't going to have a job, and I started applying to different places, and I was getting some hits, some no's. I was getting some interviews, and one day I just had to sit down and say, you know what? I said, I've been in a lot worse situations than trying to find a job. You know, my lovely wife was working a full-time job. She was working part-time, trying to get her private practice going, and she would tell me, we're good. You know, I got you. If it comes October 1st and I don't have a job, you know, we're good. So that helped, and just processing things using my little, you know, silly AAR method, and it works for anything. We have a transgender son, so I had to AAR that. I had to accept the fact that our child is choosing to be a transgender son, not the beautiful little girl that we had for quite some time, you know. And I had to acknowledge the fact that although I don't understand that whole situation, you know, I had to acknowledge that I need to respond appropriately, and that's still my child, and I need to show them that I love and support them. And I had to reach out, and I did. I started going to trainings about transgender, you know, men and women, reaching out to different support groups and things like that. And being in the victim services field with the Department of Corrections when I was doing the VOD, I had a lot of connections, and used to present also to different organizations that helped out with transgenders. You know, I had an AAR, the loss of my job. I had to accept the fact that the person that made that decision was an idiot. I had to acknowledge that that person that made that decision was an idiot. And I had to respond appropriately and call the person that made that decision an idiot. And I also had to reach out. And through reaching out, I ended up staying with the department, but I went from victim services to inmate programs and reentry, where now I'm the volunteer coordinator and I help bring volunteers in to help our incarcerated. You know, so it comes full circle. And I think I'm doing good stuff now. And Kim actually gave me Sarah's name, so that's how I got hooked up with Sarah. Sarah gave me Vaughn's name, which got me hooked up with Angels 14, which got me hooked up with Tammy with 22-0, and you know, so it's a ripple effect. And you know, if I could share anything for those that may be suffering something, whether you've been on the job for 2 years or 22 years, you know, you got an AAR or whatever works for you, whatever term, whatever, you know, acronym you come up with for yourself. You got to pay attention to the warning signs and the red flags. And even if you're paying attention to them, you can't ignore them. And that's what I was doing for decades. I was ignoring the warning signs, the high risk behaviors, the drinking, smoking, doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. And we also got to learn to hunt the good stuff, because, you know, we're trained observers, and we're trained to observe things that could hurt us. You know, sometimes we got to sit back and we got to hunt the good stuff. You know, think of 3 things a day that are good, whether it's in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. You know, you got to educate yourself. Like I said, you got to seek clarity. And I needed a lot of clarity. And my lovely wife has helped me with that. You know, people talk about the ACE study or the ACE score. You know, I got a big fat 0 on my ACE score. My lovely wife has a 9. And I never thought that I had any trauma as a kid. And she, you know, let me know that when, you know, finding out your dad's diagnosed with cancer when you were 16, you know, that's some childhood trauma. So it took me years, and I finally could acknowledge that, you know, and health issues. But I think my 0 ACE score and the good life I had those 18 years before my dad died, I think that helped my resiliency. But I think the cumulative trauma of the things that we've experienced, you know, or I've experienced in my career and in my life, have an effect on my health issues. I got a little ticker issue, some other things going on, you know, so you got to take the good with the bad. You got to find a tribe, like this tribe right here, Angels 14, whatever it is, you know, Go Ruck, whatever's out there, the VFW, the American Legion, 22-0, whatever it is, you know, find somebody that understands you, you know, and you know, maybe somebody you chewed on the same dirt with. You got to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And believe me, that was very hard for me. Many times I would go to work, but I was really sick and I shouldn't have gone to work. And one time it kind of boiled over, and I was actually on duty, and ended up going to the emergency room, and I had 104 fever. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I could finish my shift. So I get home, and basically my lovely wife and my kids at the time were like, oh, wow, you are human. You know, so we got to understand that we're not superhuman, although we may think we are. So you got to learn to be vulnerable. And I learned that my vulnerability actually became my strength when I started sharing my story, and that vulnerability, you know, also enhanced my resiliency. And we got to understand that regardless of your position, your rank, or your specialty, that it's okay to ask for help. You know, because throughout my career, I became a ranger when I was a young corporal. And once I became Ranger Torrez, because I never had a rank after that, it was just Ranger Torrez. And I never thought that, because it was always about others, you know, and I you know, trained to survive and you know, in any type of condition, you know. So yeah, I became very good at compartmentalizing. But we have to understand, we got to let our young troopers and firefighters and police know that it's okay to ask for help. And I think if we start finding out about that childhood trauma during or before the academies and basic training and stuff like that, it might help them as well. And one thing also is that I never felt myself as the tip of the spear, but I was always part of the spear. And regardless of what we've done, where we've been, how many deployments we were on, or whatever we did, we were all part of the spear, even though we may not have been the tip of the spear. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much. That's
amazing. Not too much leaves me speechless, dude, but you certainly hit the mark. You're a special man, as I started out by saying it, and thank you for all that. That's unbelievable. For those of you that do know me, this is what my notes look like today. So
you are a note taker.
I am a note taker. But I will yield the floor to anybody else that wants to ask questions or start with the conversation first. Be careful, because if I don't see any, it's going to be a long one. There she is. What's up, Sarah?
Yeah. First off, I just love how you refer to your wife as your lovely wife. You said your lovely wife every single time you talked about your wife. I think that is so sweet. Thank you for being like that for her. And I just, I think, again, one thing, by the way, you did a fantastic job sharing your story. It was beautifully shared, so vulnerable, so much there that you've overcome. And I, without sounding too mommy-ish, I'm just really proud of you. I really am. You've overcome a lot, and you are such a kind of just this calm presence on our calls, and I always, appreciate seeing you. It's really interesting. This woman, Kim, that Daniel's referred to, the coach, she's actually a really good friend of mine. We both have 4 kids, met through sports and that sort of thing, and really lived through a lot of life together. And in fact, I just texted her. I'm like, gotta get on this call. But it's interesting because she actually introduced me to Dave. Also, I went to see her do a recording, and Dave was there too, getting interviewed. So there's so many ways that, when we get together and we think about connections that could be good for each other. So I'll have to tell Kim, she's been very impacting for this. Also in your story, just training the agencies. That's what the theme too, that kept coming back to me. Imagine where so many of our first responders could be, sooner if we had somebody really educating at the, the training at the agencies, right? Just really training. This is what post-traumatic stress looks like. Have people come in and share their stories. And I think David and I have talked about that, and, just how incredible it would be to have these stories told, so that people could really connect to it. And if that day comes, or when that day comes, they'll be prepared. And I love your method, your AAR. I think that's so great. Such a great acronym for accept, acknowledge, and respond appropriately. And I also appreciate too that you were in this restorative justice idea. I tell you, if I could hop on another thing, I love that idea. Why not help heal people? Why
Absolutely.
not whoever is willing?
Yep.
Why not help them?
I was gonna say that's what I tell people that were like, oh, how could you do that? Or, just working with an inmate, and granted, they've done some horrible things, but I would just tell them, I said, well, I don't see them as an inmate or an offender. I just see them as another human being. And if I can help the survivor and in turn help that inmate, then I think it's doing good stuff, and I think it was worth it.
Those who are
subject. Now, on that subject, quick question: do you find that healing process of the inmate reduces the recidivism rate?
There's studies out there, because this program has been around since the mid 90s. It started in Texas, as just like the MLK holiday, Arizona, we were pacing ourselves, but we're the 34th state to have it. And yeah, there's evidence out there that these types of programs help reduce recidivism, because when an offender or the incarcerated individual is able to see how their crime affected whoever it was, whether it was an armed robbery or a murder or rape or child molestation. Absolutely, they, not all of them, but like I said, the ones that I was participated in, one was a DUI homicide, one was, a few were child molestation and stuff, and everyone involved got something positive out of it, and it changed, in their own words, changed their life.
Sarah, did you have more? I'm sorry that I cut you off at the end there.
Oh, no, I was just going to end with what I wrote in that, I love the scripture that says those who have been forgiven of much love much. I mean, I just think of the power of somebody who actually feels like they have a new lease in life and they will do it better next time and heal. And so I love that for the willing.
Absolutely. Awesome. Janet, did you have something you wanted to talk?
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Daniel. And I agree that the thing is what you're doing with restorative justice. The people that traumatize somebody usually goes back again, like I think it's Dr. Metz that talks about childhood trauma is what leads to everything, right? And if it's not dealt with, then it can go in any other direction. And you have your AAR. I trained with Jack Canfield, and one of his principles is E plus R equals O. And the event plus your response equals the outcome. And that is, and that is powerful just within itself as well as your AAR, because it's doing the same type of thing. Let's look at it, reassess it, and where are we going? And yeah, there's so much. And just to acknowledge you with your transgender child. In my book, one of my authors is his story was he was born a girl, and he did the transition during 2021. And so he shared his story, but he's pretty special. And I thank you again and so happy you're here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And Todd, you're up. Unmute yourself, buddy.
Mother hose dragger.
He took his hand down. He forgot to unmute.
I just I wanted to say how I saw a lot of parallels with my story and how beneficial things like your training are, because you can see by the age of that rig behind me, I'm an old school firefighter. And I can still remember my first step to PTSI. I was 17 years old. I'd been in the department for maybe a month and went out on a suicide call. A 15-year-old kid that had locked himself in a shed with a motorcycle and turned it on and asphyxiated himself. And I mean, I was still in high school, and I encountered his mother. She'd found him, and to this day, I can see that woman's face, pleading for some word of hope that wasn't coming. And I tried to talk to my LT, and basically it was suck it up. The next call's coming, and you got to be ready, and you'll get used to it. And for 6 years, that I followed his advice, and it led me down a really dark path. And I like to tell people that when you roll up on a structure fire, your fire prevention has failed. And that's where we're at right now when we deal with veteran and first responder suicides. We're fighting fires, and we need to be preventing them. And until we can build resiliency into those rookies and make self-care and and critical incident stress management part of a firefighter or a cop or a soldier's life, we're going to keep fighting fires. And it's a shame because it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. And also your AAR, I love that. It actually reminds me of some of the things I've learned as a member of Al-Anon. My wife has a pretty bad drinking problem, and you know, there's a lot of parallels there with accepting things. You know, they have the serenity prayer.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that really spoke to me. So thanks for sharing. I think it's been great, and I love having you here, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Todd. Terry, you're up.
Daniel, I appreciate you sharing your story and your vulnerability. I was really touched when you said we need to find our tribe. This is all new for me as well. I've always been a loner, thinking, you know, hey, you know what? I don't need, and I got to keep my language clean. I can do it on my own, you know, leave me alone. And then here we are, and making all these connections. And I'm beyond grateful, Sarah, for you creating this group in this community. And it's made such a huge difference. And I mean, even going through my day now, like I feel a part of something greater than myself now. I feel like I'm like, just hearing you guys talk, just conversing, all of this, it's making such a huge difference. So
Absolutely.
thank you for all of you.
Yeah, but I was right there with you. It was like, I got this, you know, I'm Ranger Torrez, and I can do anything. And, you know, we're talking about transition. I was on a little bit today with Scott's What's Next, you know, but I got out of the Army the first time after 15 years on active duty. And I was an airborne ranger. I was military police. I was like, who's not going to hire me?
Right.
And yeah, so that didn't go very well either.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Terry. James Espinoza. Hit it.
Hello, everybody. I don't want to take a bunch of time. Sorry, got my little hat image up there, but I just really want to say thank you, Daniel. Daniel, I'm here because Daniel actually invited me when I popped into the last meeting. We're speaking the same language. I've been through a lot of what you've described, just, you know, in different pathways, found some healing. And it's actually interesting. I did a podcast recently, and at the very end of the podcast, the guy asked me what I was doing for my own mental health. And I kind of looked at him and said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing now, but I've done so much. Similarly, we all have a story.
Right.
Just real brief, you know, I was in the Army, didn't largely affect me. I'm Gulf War era. I've been in law enforcement for 18 years, worked gangs, robbery, homicide, seen people die, whole 9 yards. Lost some coworkers along the way to suicide. And then I lost my brother to suicide after 5 years after losing my dad to cancer. So my cup was overflowing, right? And I found that the healing process for myself was several different methods and things. I got a master's degree, and even longer story short, I'm in a position now where I can influence some restorative issues through the Veterans Court. I have the prosecutor who is in charge of that calling me for advice on what we can do. And just like you hit on, and I don't recall the other lady's name, Janet mentioned about getting to that childhood trauma. It's so important. And that was one of the points I made, is if they're coming back 3 and 4 times, you're not dealing with the core issue. You got to get them into more deep care, you know? So anyways, I want to thank you. I want to just give you a little bit of background so you know that we're talking the same language. and great job. I'm not real familiar with this group. I hopped on because this is part of what I do for my own mental wellness, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, James. And of course, you're welcome back anytime. We have a great group of folks here that we all call family at this point. So welcome
you.
to it. And hopefully we'll see and hear more of you. That'd be amazing. CG, you're up, buddy.
Brother Daniel, thank you for sharing, as if we didn't already know how special you were. I can only echo everybody else's accolades, but I'm going to ask you a question rather than just keep saying the same great accolades that they are. Something that really is profound for me with you is your ability at some point to have the moral integrity and the moral courage and the self-awareness and man, just the internal courage to say, not be with the status quo and damn everybody that's been convicted of some sort of crime, but have the compassion to try and connect with them on a different level. Can you share with me, because I don't have that kind of, I don't know that I have that kind of maturity. I don't know if I have that kind of courage to take that kind of step. Can you, for everybody that's watching and is going to be watching, tell us kind of your journey on how you got to that place to be able to do that?
You know, that's a great question. And I think a lot of it had to do with those first 18 years and the great example that my dad set and showed us. And not just me, but, you know, my two older brothers and my younger sister. My dad was real chill, real laid back, you know, and, you know, I never saw him cry. That doesn't mean I don't think he didn't cry. But I never saw him cry. So when he died, I didn't cry. And I didn't cry until 10 years later when I had my first daughter, you know, and I saw her being born, and that was all she wrote. And now, you know, now I watch a McDonald's commercial with a dad and a son eating French fries and I'm bawling. So that's a whole different story. But I think part of it is that resiliency. And resiliency for me means that I can go through things, I can experience things, but also that I can experience what others are going through, i.e. my daughter. And believe me, I am in a controlled state of aggression towards the birthing vehicle. But I think the calmness that my dad showed to me for those first 18 years stuck with me. The fact that he told me that a Torrez never quits, and just being a respectful man. You know, I open doors for my lovely wife when we go to the car, to both of us are leaving, you know. So I just think my overall demeanor, my calmness, my respect for life and for humans, and my resiliency from all the different things that I've experienced and from the things that my family members have experienced has really grounded me. That grounding, when I've got that job, it was like, yeah, I could do this. You know, I was trained as a victim, sexual assault victim advocate for the military. So I did that a little bit in the military. And then when I was director of public safety at a small university, I had to do the sex assault crimes on campus and stuff like that. And then just the background of other family members that have gone through similar situations. The main thing is I learned in the military when we were doing detainee operations training that we have to treat even our enemies as humans. And we had a big issue with that, trying to train infantry units or artillery units or Cav Scout units to go overseas and do detainee operations, because they're going on a new deployment where 2 years earlier, their battle buddy may have been killed. And now we're going to ask them to guard Iraqis or our enemy. So we instilled that quite a bit during the training, that we have to see everyone as a human and not just as the enemy. And that's what helped me in that role of sitting face to face from someone who was a child molester, because it wasn't about me, and it's about that person as a human and trying to help the survivor and in turn help that inmate or that offender.
I have such a profound respect for you to be able to do that. Not only recognize it, to choose to do that, but to be successful at it and have such a positive outlook and mindset towards that. Again, that makes you a very special person, man. I thank you so much.
You.
Yeah, I echo Chris's statement. I don't know that that's something I could handle or manage. However, you said something interesting about treating people like humans, and the response of soldiers who went back for a second tour and training them up for that. I think in law enforcement, we have that same issue, at least in the years past. I don't know, what the academy classes are looking like now, but I think when we had the curbside adjustment process in law enforcement, as I came through, it's funny because there was something very humanistic about that, but at the same time, smashing some dude's face into the curb because he just punched his wife in the face probably wasn't the best method of dealing with it. But it worked. You never saw him again. However, you weren't treating them like a human. You were treating them like a piece of meat because you were bigger, stronger, whatever. It doesn't work long term, and I can certainly appreciate that idea of treating everybody as a human with value, regardless of the path that their life has taken. And I think that's so special, and it's such a message you can pass forward. Sarah.
All right. So we have a little raffle that's going to happen here.
I bought two to support Mr. Michael. This is mine. So I do have one, but I bought two.
Mine's in my car.
And then I also have a coin, a challenge coin from the International Public Safety Association. It's another association where they do webinars and stuff, and I'm a member. But it's a Fight the Stigma coin. And obviously it's talking
love
about
it. It's beautiful.
talking about mental health. So it says not all pain is physical, not all wounds are visible. So we like to do a little raffle to help spread some love.
Mhm. I'll say, Daniel, that one of the things that you did say was about health. I think that if our doctors were more aware, like I had health issues for years, and I can relate it all back before the diagnosis. And if they were more aware of, instead of just trying to put a Band-Aid on something, that maybe we would, that's another awareness everywhere, right?
Absolutely.
That's one clue.
It's awareness and just, knowledge and education.
Totally. And that's what we do with each other here, and whatever we go next.
So here is I'm just mixing it up here, just so you know. Okay, should I pull it out, Daniel?
Go ahead.
All right, I have no idea. It's James. James Espinoza, you're a winner.
There you go.
What? Wow.
You're a winner.
Go Dodgers.
Well, this is
Go
the
Red.
second chance rehabilitation ranch.
All right. I'll wear it with pride.
Organization started by a former Marine.
Wow. I guess it pays to show up sometimes. Thank you, guys.
Shoot me a DM on LinkedIn with your address.
I will.
I'll
I'll tell you what. I'll trade you. I'll send you a team veteran shirt for my nonprofit.
All right.
All right. We'll connect offline.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
connect offline. I appreciate that. That was just something I thought, would be fun and nice. And we're supporting, our brother with Second Chance Rehab Branch, and coin is nice. Who doesn't like challenge coins, right?
Absolutely.
I love them.
Very cool. Well, congratulations, James, on that. Daniel, I just wanted to pipe in with a couple of things that caught my attention, and some of them are just me being me, but the first three sentences that you started talking about your dad, and it's what choked you up. And it was the only time that you really choked up through the entire hour. And I find that heartwarming so just bear with me for a minute. And I lost my mom at an early age. My dad was out of my life early. And I didn't cry for my mom for almost 10 years. And like you said, it wasn't until I had children of my own that the emotions of her loss truly started affecting me. And now I can barely say the word mom without bawling my brains out. So I just, that was just so genuinely heartwarming to me. And somebody said something to me after she passed, was it never gets any easier, it just gets different.
Right.
And that has stuck with me forever. And so I appreciated that. The whole CPR thing too, the how many times we're like, yeah, this is a waste of my time. But you do it for the survivors. That burst of hope gives them the strength to be able to persevere through the tragedy. So cool on you for doing that. That was awesome. I've been there. The react versus respond thing I think is always so important. You talked a lot about that. And smell is so powerful, isn't it?
It is.
I don't know if I ever realized that until after 9/11, when I did my time in the city after 9/11. There's certain smells to this day that make me throw up. And I can't articulate the smell itself. But smells are so powerful. It's
oh yeah.
I think the most powerful sense for me anyway. And the AAR stuff I think is awesome. I use OODA Loop for those that have been down that path too, as firearms instructors.
Absolutely.
That's the process I go through with the same thing. Finding purpose is awesome. It's more important than the income. So when you found your purpose in this volunteering piece, I think that's really, really special. And I've struggled with that myself over the last 2 years in retirement. My wife's like, who cares? You get a pension. Just do what makes you happy, you know? And you feel weird, like you're not contributing, but your pension pays the freaking mortgage. Like it's okay. Just do what makes you happy. And that's awesome. I'm so glad you found that spot for yourself. And I love when you said hunt the good stuff as a trained observer. I think that's really cool. And if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that and reuse it somewhere along the line.
Absolutely. I stole that from the Army when I went to comprehensive resiliency training and stuff. So
and that's the other thing. I wrote on the top of it at the end, I wrote, you are the true definition of resiliency, with the whole bouncing forward concept versus bouncing back. And so you're truly an example for that. And you had said adversity, talking about adversity and making us better people. I don't want this to turn to a political conversation, but if anybody listens to Joe Rogan, which on a regular basis, he actually said something in an interview the other day about how if he won't have a friend that hasn't been through adversity, because he doesn't think they can be a good. I was like, that took me a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you know what? My best friends have been fucked up somewhere along the way. And where does the rest of us have too? But if you haven't been through adversity, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want that person in my life. So that just triggered that thought about Joe Rogan for me. But and the whole, I have 100 pages of notes here on the healing the inmate thing. I think that's fascinating, and good on you for doing it. I think that's such a special thing. And if you are comfortable, I'd love to talk to you offline about your transgender child. And the reason I say that is because I have two friends that are in two very different places with their two children. And I find the whole concept fascinating. And my wife does a lot of work in that area. My wife's a sexual health expert. She does a lot of work with an organization by us called High Tops. And it's a sexual health advisory nonprofit that works with youth and youth of all different types of identities. And I just found the whole process fascinating. And my two friends, their one child started that process at the age of 3, identifying themselves differently. And the other child was 13. And such a different life process they went through. And I'm curious, if you don't mind sharing, how old your child was when that process began.
In high school. So we were in Fort Bliss, Texas, El Paso, Texas. And then we ended up moving to California. Nothing against California. But when my son was hey baby, what year? For Lee, where he transitioned or thought about it?
I'm not sure if he was a junior or senior.
Yeah, I want to say junior year. There were others that were identifying as transgender, and our son actually told us that he believes a lot of it was environmental. So he didn't grow up thinking he was in the wrong body or anything like that. It was, he became more aware as sophomore, junior year, and then, fully kind of made that leap of faith in the senior year. And recently had the top surgery, as they say, and is living as, it's, so I'm a knucklehead because we didn't know, but he was in color guard and we'd go to these competitions and his friends were calling him Tate. And my lovely wife would be like, who the F is Tate? Because he didn't tell us. So he started identifying with his friends, his peer group first, and he chose the name Tate. And again, my lovely wife's like, no. And I'm like, no, you're not going by Tate. The people are going to start calling you Tater. So we got through, and he actually chose my middle name, which is Lee, to use as his transgender name. But like I said, I just had to immerse myself in it. I had to acknowledge that I don't fully understand. I need to learn more. I need to learn how to be supportive and loving because he is still my child.
Of course.
And yeah, so it was junior year, started thinking about identifying, and then, did the name change with the peer group, and senior year was all in. And now he's getting ready to graduate college in May and just had top surgery last month.
It's amazing. And I hope that he finds peace in his decision and is able to move forward and with that self of inner peace. It's so important. And I'm seeing that with my two friends that are going through it with their children. And it's so difficult to get to that place of acceptance. And I just, so awesome. Good for you and good for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just as they were kids growing up, it was, we didn't, I was raised Roman Catholic, so I kind of forced that on them because I didn't know any different. But anything else, sexuality or identification, whatever it was, we tried to be as open and warm as possible. And, I think it helped all of us.
Of course.
Include his siblings and whatnot. Yeah, and my family here, I'm born and raised here, so I got a lot of family here. My two older brothers are here, and my sister and my mom, and they, they accept.
That's awesome.
It's just something we're going through, and
family's family, regardless of
absolutely
anything else. So that's amazing. Thank you for being so open and sharing about that. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And we can connect offline.
Chris.
So in the totality of this conversation, I want to say how powerful it is.
of the mindset and positive attitude that everybody has, to include your son, Daniel. It's that can be very inspirational for what it is. I was talking to David in a conversation this week, and I was watching a podcast. They were talking about Joe Rogan, so it's kind of what strung me to say this. But Patrick Ben-David, if you don't know who he is, he's got a phenomenal podcast, and he's a big influencer and media mogul. And he's the, I think it's his quote, I assign it to him. He says that your most valuable commodity that you have is a positive attitude. He says that Joe Rogan is as successful as he is because of his positive attitude. And I see all of that in most everybody in this group that we have. And he attributes monetizing it, putting monetary value to his attitude, has said that he is at minimum, $1 billion attitude guy. And that's why he's so successful. That is why he is so successful and influential, because of his positive attitude. You see all the negative shade that gets thrown at the guy recently. And he's completely true to himself. He could do like so many others and, get in his poo-poo pants, but he doesn't allow people to affect him because he chooses to have this positive attitude no matter what kind of shade or negative situation he finds himself. And brother, to you and everybody else on here, I admire the hell out of you, because I think that our groups definitively exemplify exactly that. That's really all I have to say, man. You guys are all fantastic.
Yeah, and
I'm going to reserve comment on that until I have my $1 billion, and then I'll say, yes, you were 100% correct.
Yeah, and I think that's, that positivity and just everyone willing to listen. I believe, well, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I'll speak for myself, that I think we listen non-judgmentally. And after I presented my story at a first responder behavioral health conference here, sponsored by Arizona State, I had a young firefighter come up to me and ask me, offline, he's like, what one thing do you think when you were that young, soldier, that would have helped you change your trajectory? And I didn't even have to think about it. I said, you know what, if I would have just had somebody who would have listened to me non-judgmentally, like maybe that chaplain, I think that may have changed my trajectory. I'm good with where I'm at, but the path and the travels I've taken to get here might have been a little different if that chaplain would have just said, put his hand on my shoulder and said, I'm here to listen, instead of giving me a book or a pamphlet. So I think so, and I think I get that sense from our group, our tribe here, is that we listen, and we listen non-judgmentally, because that's what we do.
I agree. And unfortunately, I don't think enough people see that in law enforcement, because that's what we do in law enforcement. Like, our whole purpose is to sit there and listen and help you with your problems, regardless of who you are, what you look like, what you worship, where you come from. Nobody cares. You're human, and we're there to help you. And I find that story with the priest or minister, or whatever, the chaplain, sorry, at on the Army side is, and I think Sarah knows the story from a couple weeks ago. I think we spoke about it. I got blown up on social media, on a social media group for supporting law enforcement in a Jewish community group that I am a part of. And I brought the information to the rabbi of the synagogue that we are affiliated with, and not for anything more than just, it's hard to reconcile being a cop and being Jewish at the same time in this environment at the moment. And she goes, yeah, I'm sorry, we see this differently. And I was like, so you're siding with the haters? She goes, I can't say that, but I'm just sorry we see this differently. It's probably not a conversation we should have. I was like, you fucking kidding me? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And
these are our faith leaders.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I don't ever want to see anybody get hurt or sick or suffer in any way. However, a week later, she ended up resigning. This is just this past week. She's got colon cancer. So, again, I don't want to see anybody suffer, but sometimes karma's a bitch.
Right. Absolutely.
So that was my 2 cents.
All right.
I think that
Maybe that
the
is for
journey,
suffering.
yeah,
Was that
The
Janet?
journey of somebody not listening to us or being there for us makes us even more aware. I know as a police dispatcher, we don't have the visual identifiers and that when we're dealing with, we have to listen for what's not being said. And all of us have to do that, right? It's there, but it's just one thing taken away is that visual. But I agree, like, I think back myself to people not listening. And I think that that's maybe why we tend to go a little more that way. And I'm not saying I'm the best listener in the world. Heck, ask my kids, they'll probably say that. But, you know, they're the judge and jury. And, but that our journey started because of all of this other stuff. And hopefully some of the people that we share this with or are come into contact with, maybe that's where we're meant to be to help them have a little bit of a lighter journey. And they're baby steps, right? We're doing those baby steps.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, we can cut off the recording, I guess is good, right?